Yeah, I would love to welcome you to this early morning, afternoon, or evening session based on which time zone you're coming from. For all those people in India, evening session. And I'm excited to share with you a little bit about what I have been learning and experiencing as I have been trying to do intergenerational storytelling and artistic expressions as a way to, dream of a better, brighter, flourishing future and how we could be a part of shaping it through this amazing way of storytelling. Um, so to start, I thought I should give you a little bit of an introduction about myself. I'm Swetha Sutrabasham. I'm also from India, but I'm currently based in New York. I am a wildlife biologist by training, but over the years of like wanting to take care of the planet, I have learned that there is so much more to be done in taking care of this planet that goes beyond just the confines of conservation, the way it has been taught to us. And the more and more I have moved into understanding social and ecological crisis and like how do we support the social and ecological transformation that we need in this world, and learning over time that policy space can only do so much. And if you really need the true transformation, what is needed for the world to change, I realized that we need to understand culture as well and engage with it in a way that it can create the transformation we need. So that's kind of what drew me towards working with Kinship, which is an organization that is it's from the US, but it is a global network. It's becoming a global network of young people. And Kinship really exists to help meet this moment that we are talking about right now, the transition that we are in, by bringing people together, using art to subtly and profoundly shift culture, and awakening a deeper sense of belonging, care, responsibility to one another and the more than human world. So, with that, I would love to start the session today. And a practice that I love doing nowadays when I start workshops or a session which is going to last close to an hour, where I need all of you to actively engage in the conversation. Since it is not really one way sharing, it's a conversation that goes between us. I wanted us to start off with some grounding. And if everybody is up for it, I would love for us to settle into the seat, sit comfortably wherever you are, and take a deep breath in, a slow, deep breath in, and a slow, deep breath out. And while you're breathing, you could close your eyes if you would like to, or you could gaze softly in the distance. And as you're breathing, notice that the air that's in your lungs right now, that's been moving through you, is actually moved through forests, through oceans, through cities, and through countless other beings. You're not outside the world's story, but you're breathing inside it. As we ground ourselves today to this workshop, I would like us to think about the systems we call the climate crisis, the social ecological crisis, the nature crisis, or the modern society that we live in. These are not just policies or technologies. They're also stories. All of these are stories about progress, about power, about domination, separation, and what it means to live well. It's all those forms of stories. I want us to just feel into that for a minute. And realize that we may be living at the end of one story or a end of a series of stories, however you see it, and learn that we are actually in a space that we could also be nurturing beyond that. We are currently living at the end of a story that talks about separation, building, superiority, and control. And we may be also standing at the threshold of another one, a different one, something that is flourishing for us. I would like us to dream a little bit today. I had recently heard a podcast where we talked about we are our we are our future ancestors' wildest dreams, and I thought that was a fascinating thing to say. So I would like us to just think about if we are the wildest dreams of our future and of our future, generations. What does that look like? And what does that story look like that we are currently at that threshold of? Okay, I would love if your eyes are still closed. I would love to see if you could slowly, again, ground yourself, feel the ground beneath your feet, and then open your eyes gently and come into our session. Today, we'll be talking about living stories and flourishing futures, and we will be having a workshop around that. The idea for today is not to be crafting better messages, but it is actually about noticing the living story we are already inside and asking what future that story is making possible. So, with that one last deep breath together, I would request all of you to get back into the session. And as I start, I would love to share with you a little bit of an outline for what we are planning to do today. So today, our session, the workshop, we would like to start off by doing a little bit of an overview of what stories mean, how did they create culture, what is narratives, and then how they have shaped the world we are in today, and how it's also shaped some of the crisis climate messaging that we see today as well. And from there, we would go into understanding what these climate narratives that we see right currently out there have done to us, and how we can think of better ways of telling the same stories. And then it'll be our opportunity to try some of those stories out together. We will have two rounds of breakout conversations. I see that we have 11 people. So we might split us up into a groups of, three people each, or three or four. And then we will do a little bit of workshopping of a few different ideas. Then we would talk about a few different approaches to create more transformative, regenerative stories, and then try out one of them as well. And I hope that this session would leave you with some of an idea of how something new or something different that somebody else has tried that you would like to try as well. And as I mentioned to you, based on my background and the work I do, I have not been in this space too long, but I have still wanted to share whatever I have learned over the last few years. I have wanted to share this with all of you in this session. So please don't think of me as any storytelling expert, but somebody who is also learning along the way, but also willing to share what I've learned. Okay, so I just want to check the chat to see if there's anybody who has something they want me to check. I'm guessing there is a Spanish interpretation that's happening. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so then if everybody looks good, maybe a few thumbs ups to say, let's get into our workshop. All of you feel like you are ready for the workshop. Louise and who else? We have Stephanie and Prakash. Do you feel up for the workshop? Awesome. Thanks, Louise, for the thumbs up. Cool. So we're going to get started. So as we start, I wanted us to move into just giving a little bit of a framing. Again, I don't think there is one right way of looking at this. I think there are different ways of looking at the same topic. And even when you look at storytelling, there are different ways of seeing it. This is the way I have seen it, and I have seen a few of the people around me also view it. And if there are different ways you view the same concepts, please do share it in the chat, and I would love to hear that too. So I would like to start off with the premise of what I would be using in this workshop and how I've seen the power of storytelling and the power of culture. So if you see a story as a star, then I would see that narratives are created as a constellation. So there are many, many stories coming together that create a narrative. And then finally, you have culture, which is the whole galaxy. And that's kind of how you see like one subset growing into another. And if you had to look at it in a more clear way, it's essentially a story is a single moment or a memory which is shared around over and over based on how magnetic that story is and transformative it feels in our body. And then those threads link up many stories into a worldview, also creating narratives. And then the space where these stories and narratives actually live and are being passed on is culture, and is the essence of the fuzzy everything that we have all around us that we feel is difficult to control, but is also crucial to figure out how to change, because that's kind of shaping everything. So, if you had to look at what exactly this has shaped for us over the years, I would say let's start thinking about the same concepts of stories, narratives, and culture as ways that have actually helped shape the system that we live in. This is a picture from the IPBES, Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for Science Policy Platform's Global Assessment Report, where they talked about what is really needed to get out of the social and ecological crisis. Also, the biodiversity crisis is what they called it. But they had a very interesting thing of understanding what the root problem of everything is. And they pointed it out to be the values and behaviors. So if we had to explore that idea and how this culture play into it, you would say that stories shape culture and culture shapes behavior. The root cause of most of the biodiversity and climate crisis is overconsumption, deforestation, you know the list, right? And this is not just a technical failure. They emerge from cultural narratives that equate economic growth with success, where you think you can have unlimited growth and unlimited consumption on a limited planet, and consumption with well-being. It's connected those two. And when these stories dominate, the extractive behavior feels normal, right? It's normal to consume because that's what's the dominant narrative right now. So that brings us to what narratives do. They kind of normalize what is possible and what is acceptable. And then that cultural narratives are defined as what we see as progress, what we normalize, what we think is what is prosperity to us, what does power mean to us. If the prevailing narrative positions humans as separate from nature or and growth as inevitable, then unsustainable systems become a logical outcome. And policies alone cannot shift the underlying narrative remaining intact to remain intact, right? So, if you had looked at how culture designs the systems that we live in, because we always think that policy that shifts things, there is a culture that underlines all of that. And our institutions, our markets, our policies are actually an expression of shared cultural stories. To address a climate diversity crisis or a social crisis, we must first think of how do we transform some of these narratives that are driving these behaviors, right? If we see that so much of what we are living in today is driven by these kind of behaviors, which are underpinned by this culture and these stories, then how do we change that, right? So, system change actually requires cultural transformation, and cultural transformation itself begins with stories and changing the way we use them, and we live and reshape the stories we are living in. So, here is the first activity we are going to do together. And here, this is where you can use the chat. If I were to say that we are not just telling stories, but we live in them, if you what would be the stories that you think you are living in? Maybe take 30 seconds to answer the questions that I have for you. You could answer one of them or all of them, but think about, what story about success did you grow up with? What story about nature did you inherit? And you could talk about inheritance from your parents or your ancestors, the older, much more greater grandparents. And what story about power did you internalize? I can pause while I see the chat and while you guys think about what are the stories that you're living in. What are the stories you have been aware of? You could also talk about a story that you were unaware that you were living in. And how did that look like when you thought about, realized that you were living in one? Feel free to use the chat. I could start by saying one of the stories of success that I had inherited was meritocracy, thinking I am only worth what I am in this world if I achieve things. And I had really deeply realized that hard work and my hard work has put me where I am, not thinking about how much my class privilege, my caste privilege, since I'm from India, actually drove what success I was able to see in the world. And that was the story I grew up with. Hard work gives you success, but there's much more to it than that. Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I see that you've written success is financial independence and wealth and house and marriage and kids. Absolutely right. Nature is separation, outsiders. That's amazing. Very true in so many ways for us. I used to live a story about success that told me that good marks, finishing a grade, getting a job, a house, and children. That's exactly the one I was talking as well about, Louise. So it looks like you and me have been living in a similar story, unaware that that drove us to what we did in the world. Okay, if all of you are, if there are more people, I agree. It was a boring story. And today, this is our time to start rewriting some of those stories and making them more interesting. That's why the whole conference is such a cool place. We can all come together to think of rewriting these stories. You guys can continue to put them in the chat, and as I see them, I can read out for people so that you can see all the other ways that you have thought about these things. You can also think about power. That's an interesting one to analyze. What does power in your mind look like? So I'm going to move us slowly to now talking about all the dominant stories you guys have been talking about. It's yes, Zarmina is actually saying success is external validation and is the only measure of success. Absolutely, a very clear thing of meritocracy as well. So yeah, so most of what you guys are talking about is a lot about the dominant stories we live in and the modern world that we are living in right now, which has this idea that, we are facing a social and ecological crisis, but this is fueled by all these ideas that you guys have mentioned. The ideas where there's a dominant narrative of separation, of superiority, of meritocracy, of the American dream. There's so many different versions of these stories that have come together to create this dominant narrative. And that has kind of influenced what we do and how we do it, which is also in a way, the current that's also in a way driven us to the crisis we are in, but it's also driven us towards the the approach we have taken to solve our crisis, right? From like the current efforts we are actually seeing are really not enough to acknowledge what's the root cause that is there, the broken story, the separation that we have with each other in our relationships and with the web of life. And that's something that the dominant story has driven to us. And obviously we should not forget the impact of all the isms on this dominant story, from colonialism to capitalism to racism to casteism to sexism, all the isms, right? So if you had to now zoom a little bit in before we zoom out, if we had to think about what most of the dominant climate narratives are today doing, would you all feel like what the slide says is you agree with? Most of the narrative today is actually fear driven. There is a hero centric thing. There are climate heroes. There are sustainable development heroes. They always look at the solution of this crisis to be there's a problem, which is the crisis, there's a solution, and there is a victory at the end when you have that solution. They use like linear ideas to complex systems, and it's a lot of it is anthropocentric. It has still of an extractive mindset where you look at resources, nature as a resource, not as a relative, and the idea of like we can still continue this growth as long as we are sustainable in the way we do it. And this premise that you can still continue to have unlimited growth. We just need to tweak some things here and there. Do any of you agree with some of these or all of these narratives that you've seen in the climate space or in the crisis space that we are in now and the messaging around it? You feel free to use the chat. I would love to see how this idea resonates with you guys. Louise, Zermania, what do you guys think? Does this make sense? Does this feel like this is one of the dominant things in the narrative we see? Okay, give me a thumbs up if yes.
Yes, it is.
Ah,
I was just saying that when I was growing up, when it came to the planet, it was like we need to save it for the children. But I think a couple of years ago, I started hearing this story about that nature needs to be preserved for its own sake. So I thought that was rather interesting.
yeah, and that's a shift. That's a shift in our story, and that's really great that you observe that shift. It is true. It is changing, and this change has happened. But there is still a dominant story that is still fear-driven. And the thing is, one of the things that we realized what the dominant story does, it usually brings in this space of urgency, the space of breathlessness. It's like you need to do something, you know? It's not like you need to do what is right for a long-term thinking. It's like right now, we need to do something right now, fix it right now, and then think about all the other deeper underlying root causes later. That's the mindset that people are in. And it's polarized us, right? There are heroes and there are villains, rather than we are in relationship on this planet together and we need to do something about it. And it's moved us into the space where you feel like isolated, like we are alone against this problem. It's also emotionally, it has this kind of storytelling triggers anxiety, a moral outrage, helplessness, a superiority, a blame, sometimes burnout as well. It narrows our attention. It literally puts our body in fight or flight mode, right? And therefore, you cannot look further when you're in fight or flight. You only want to survive for the next few steps, as long as the tiger or whatever our ancestors were scared of, which created fight or flight, doesn't eat us up, right? So you're not really thinking for long term. You're not thinking about children. You're only thinking about how do I survive this next few minutes, right? And therefore, your decisions are also driven by that fear, right? But what if we all agree that these dominance systems and cultures and isms have, and those stories have got us to where we are here today? What kind of stories do you think could help us nourish a better future? And this is where all of us could start dreaming a little bit, right? Do you have something that you would like to share about what could be some of the stories that could help us nourish a better future? If the stories we have today are not good enough to do that. I know, Zermania, you were able to unmute yourself. Do you want to unmute and answer? Or Stephanie or Louise or Prakash?
Sure, I can unmute for a moment. Thank you. I'm loving everything that you're sharing. So is my dog, apparently. um, and I think I'm really inspired by Sophie Strand's storytelling and the way that she centers nature and kinship in her stories. Yeah, I really, and also like what we did yesterday with Sierra and Andre, and there's another session today, the flirting with nature, like decentering humans in our stories, and not because there's a way I think the storytelling could be anthropocentric or anthropomorphic. So ecological storytelling, but more in the sense of like listening to the stories that are there and trying to center nature in our own like ecological imagination, or yeah, ecologizing our imaginations, rerouting our imaginations in the earth, and trying to tell stories from that place rather than from this like linear box story that you shared earlier.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's really cool to hear about it. And yeah, your dog is actually a very important part of our conversation today. So I'm glad that we are, what we are saying is resonating with your dog too. So yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the ways we could actually shift these stories and think of a better future is actually thinking about it with like the more than human world and centering them rather than us. It's a very important part of it. So I had a few more ideas for what this story could look like. And I was thinking, and this is something I think all of you should give me like a heart or a thumbs up to, so that I know you guys also think it would be cool if we could start having stories that are more relational, are more interconnective, are collective, diverse, are decolonial, uh, have humility in them, have grief in them, and how we are processing grief. Then have a kincentric worldview where the earth is a relative and not an object. How we can be rooted in reciprocity, how we bring in some origin stories into what we are talking about, orienting towards responsibility, being cyclical rather than purely linear, and then also thinking about how do we compost and how our stories need composting, working with our shit. There are a lot of those that we need to do. So, yeah, I would love to say thank you, Stephanie, for the big yes. Anybody else who also resonates with what if we could change our stories this way? Thanks, Manish.
I love your last one on working with shit. I think sometimes we can get too like we need the love, we need the enamored part, and we need to put our attention on the beauty. But in this regenerative way, we really need to work with the shit. So I love that on there. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm glad you like it too. I love that too. And I think I heard that in like Hospicing Modernity, the book by Vanessa Machado. I think now her name is Aguti. That book has a really good chapter about like working with shit and understanding your shit. Don't just flush it away, but actually work with it. So yeah, thank you for connecting with that part too. So thank you guys. Thank you, Andrew and Marina and Manish for your reactions. Really appreciate it. So if we can think about these just for the conversation as regenerative stories rather than what we have as our dominant stories, and if we wanted to start writing these stories, do you think we can go into a short breakout where we could potentially take the next 5, 10 minutes? And I don't know, how many people are we? We are 13 people. Maybe we could do this in the group here because we have 10 minutes to do a little bit of a rewriting of the story. And then we could do another breakout at the end where you actually do a little bit more if possible. Would you guys like to think about rewriting a story that you know? So think about one of the a crisis story that you have seen now, like a climate or a biodiversity story you often hear in the media, in policy spaces, or in your organization or an organization you know. And just think about writing like a 3 sentences about it, and write in the way it is usually told, and then rewrite that story. Rewrite that story in a way that we can start centering relationships, a collective agency, the land, the more than human, the responsibility rather than blame, and think about the future that is being normalized. And how do we change that? Thank you, Archana. We could do 2 breakouts maybe, and then we come back in like 10 minutes or is 8 minutes now, just so that we have time for the last breakout as well. No, all okay, no worries, Marina. You can listen to the other part of the conversation, even if you can't participate. But if you guys want to, you could actually put some of your stories that you want to try rewriting in the chat. I think it would be beautiful to read all your stories. So I wouldn't want to take away the, the the strength of your story. I would like all of us to hear everybody's stories. So I'm going to pause now and give you guys a chance to just do your story and share it in the chat. Anybody who is able to. Again, no pressure that everybody has to. Than the time we have today, since it's a very short workshop. We had initially intended this for a 90-minute workshop. So if it feels short today, also take it with you and write it later on and see. The idea of this practice is to see how it feels in your body and see what changed for you when you wrote this. You wrote it in a way that felt different in your own body, right? As a story, because a story that is powerful evokes a reaction that is visceral, that is beyond just what your mind feels. It's felt in your body, and see what that story that you create feels like in your body. I have another minute before I have to move. So if anybody has any short story you would like to share, please feel free to. 1, 2 lines.
Hi, Swetha.
Hi.
I have something to say. I don't think it is in the structure that you want, in the format
That's,
that you
that's
want.
totally okay. My structure is
Yes.
just an idea.
Okay. So I'm not up to date with all the like political whatever is going on in climate. I'm not following those narratives. So I will just say one thing which is on theme. If it's okay with you,
Yes.
right? Okay, okay. So I'll just say that this there's this notion about survival of the fittest.
Mm.
So when we think of wildlife and animal, jungle life and so on, we often this comes to mind, survival of the fittest, which is a kind of a rational, realistic way of looking at things. But I would like to contrast this with our childhood. Like we in India used to read these books, children's stories, where they were anthropomorphic animals, and so they in these stories they will live like human beings. They will have societies like human beings and relationship like human beings. Some will be friends, some will be like uncle, nephew, niece. They will have those relationships, and sometimes they will have conflict. So then they will go to the king, and king will be either an elephant or a lion. So what I'm trying to say is I just by listening to you, it occurred to me that if we compare and contrast these two, like this rational and realistic way of survival of the fittest, and where violence becomes normalized or a part of wildlife. So there is that way of looking which is realistic, but it is accepting violence as a like a brutal picture of wildlife and jungle life, as compared to the anthropomorphic thing that we had in childhood. And I think that creates more endearment and closeness with jungle and the way of looking at, because I've never let go. Like your first slide was about what kind of narratives have you let go or something like that, it's the question you asked. So
Mhm.
I never let any other narrative seep in. I didn't take this western notion of survival of the fittest and hunter gatherer and all these things. I never took in. I'm
Mhm.
still holding on to those anthropomorphic way of looking at animals and wildlife and forest and everything. And I think that is a better story, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool that you have kept the Panchatantra ways of like the more than human being centered in your stories. That's really cool. And yes, the competition over collaboration and
Yes.
cooperative work. There is a lot of like that in our current modern story, which is competition based. But actually, what we need is collaboration. We need to work together to solve this crisis. So yeah, absolutely
Mm.
right. I see Andrew and Louise have put in stories, and I mean, they're super beautiful. I'm going to read Andrew's for now, and we will see if we can, all of you please read and Louise's story as well. So Andrew says, a story I often hear is we need to protect our native species from invaders. Be warned, we need to find and stop or pull the bugs and plants that don't belong. Very true. A way to regenerate the story is listen to the journeys of the beings who currently reside with us. That's really nice. You're changing them from being things that need to be killed and they're things that are invading. From being the enemy, you actually made them actually a being that is here and you have to listen to their journey. That's really nice. Thank you, Andrew. So I'm going to read, I have three last slides before I want to open up for you guys to do your last workshop, and I don't want to miss out giving you guys time for that. I just wanted to check with our organizers if we need to leave this room at sharp 9 or if we have like 5 minutes more. Like, is it sharp at the dot of the hour or do we have extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Archana, do you know?
I'm just going to quickly check and I will let you know if we can have 5 minutes more.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate it. So here now we are going to go into a workshop where we are going to think about how do we become really, regenerative storytellers. I think you guys have in many ways talked about this, about how you want to see relationships, who is connected, what flows, the power, the care, the resources that are moving from isolated events to talking about living systems and webs of life. Then including the more than human that, Prakash here talked about. We have Andrew who's also talked about it. Stephanie talked about it. Like really, where is the land in your story? Where's the water? Where are also the future generations? And obviously the more than human world in its entirety, right? And moving from a human centric to a relational storytelling. And if you have to think about it, you should never forget the power, right? Who benefits? Who carries the risk? What is the collective agency? I always want us to remember power because power always has a negative, bad rep. But the reality is, it is a very important player that we need to acknowledge in any story. And we need to like decode the story to see where is the power in the story and who's having the power and who's benefiting from the story, and move from like the hidden hierarchy that is there to move into a place where you can demystify that and create shared responsibility. It's storytelling. This kind of storytelling can be a way to help us stretch time. What past is ignored, what future is being normalized, and moving from short-term thinking of urgency to a generational thinking of like, what does my future and future generations want from me right now? Shifting the language, right? The language of life, really moving away from a war and saviors and this extraction metaphors to actually replace it with reciprocity, stewardship, regeneration. There's so many ways in which when we shift the language, rather than we say we are fighting climate change, we are saying we're healing the planet. This was an indigenous elder who said that to me, and I was like, it changes in our mind. Rather than fighting climate change, we are healing the planet, and suddenly the way you feel it in your body changes instantly. Then centering collective work, it's not one hero, but it's a community in relationship that is doing this. So you're shifting from individual to ecosystem. Then thinking about like practicing humility, what stories shape you, what assumptions do you have that you are being honest that you carry with you, and you are still unlearning and composting in so many ways. And that's a part of who we are and who we've become. And we need to be honest about that. Regenerative stories has a lot of this inner work that you have to, show to the world with humility and with vulnerability as well in some way, and authentic expression, right? Story is also can be seen as ceremony, and it's space where you can hold grief and expression. So I just wanted to share some of these bullets of what a storytelling could look like. And I was thinking of sharing three tools that I have come across, which I loved, as ways to help us create regenerative stories. So the three which I wanted to share with you, and I obviously, if I had more time, I would love for us to try some of the deeper exercises and tools to see if you like those approaches and those approaches make sense to you. But these approaches have been tried by, I don't know, maybe you guys as well. Maybe I have definitely tried the first two, and I've loved the kind of reaction it has got. I can show you some of that in the next slide. But one of the things we've drawn is it's called 3D mapping. If you guys have ever heard of MITx and Autoshama, they have created this thing called Theory U. If you think about modifying that, to actually connect to what we are talking about, where you say where we are, who are we, and with whom are we with, and then kind of asking these questions of your own roots, understanding the roots of who you are, your role, your relationships within the ecosystem of your life, but also the larger metabolism of the planet. Exploring like a deepening way of understanding your role, the impact you have, the gifts you have, and the responsibilities you see from within these ecosystems. And also thinking about identifying some of these core, you can actually think about this kind of mapping as a way to identify core leverage points. And when we did a lot of this, this was a great way for us to uncover like the colonial sides to who we are, the uh, we were able to think about the roots that we had before, like what the grandparents talked to us about versus like what did our colonial roots take away from us. And then there was a lot of grieving in that, but then there was also the space of saying this is what I need to compost. Like for me it was meritocracy had to be composted in my life, composting judgment of if somebody is not able to do things as achieve as many things as me, that doesn't mean that they're bad. And then composting some of these like influences that stories of the modern world have had on me and my behavior, and changing that. The other interesting tool I have come across is actually deep listening to community and the human and more than human world. So here it's all about this I had run this in a fellowship that I had done last year, and it was both these tools had like a really amazing responses. What we did have was that in these tools, we what I learned is if you just went to the earth and you spent an hour, like say so let me show you the one which I have as an example from one of our fellows from our nature and culture fellowship. And what he did is this is his log, like he did a log at entry on his birthday as a way of listening. So he said he went to the wetland that is near his village in the morning after some rain, and he spent an hour in nature. And the idea was to just listen to the earth. And this he had some of the most beautiful things that came up while he was listening to the earth. And I mean, this is a bigger thing for you to read, and you can screenshot it as well to read it, or I can like make sure I send it to you if there's a way to share this presentation with all of you. But just listening to what an hour where you just listen to nature without controlling it, without judging it, even for somebody who's never done it before, can really open powerful ways of storytelling. I had people in our fellowship. I'll just share a screen of what the fellowship was. It was a really beautiful intergenerational space, and in this space we actually saw how different people were able to use storytelling to actually influence, like change the way they talk to each other in their communities, creating intergenerational spaces of belonging. But also just the power that nature has in it. Like you think, what will I get if I just sit with nature for an hour? But just listening really deeply could actually unlock so much of what you have never like sensed into before. And the stories that come out of that I felt were the most powerful stories I've ever heard. So I did want to share that with you. Here is a story from a little bit of a storytelling from the Theory U and the 3D mapping that one of the fellows talked about. And he really talks about how the story of what he had heard from his grandparents when he was growing up, but then how he now feels like, and then the impact of colonialism on them, but then also talking about how he now feels like with the world and how it's drowning with the kind of you're being bombarded by things all around, and the grief you have on like how things have changed in the world. So just wanted to share some of those ideas with you. And yeah, and the last few minutes, I actually had so the last part I wanted to share with you was in the three things that I had was storytelling to the future. So this storytelling for the future was a very beautiful thing that I came across, and I've seen there are some organizations that also do it. But I would love to recommend you guys to read this book called Octavia's Brood. That has short stories, and it has one from a future generations a short story that is super powerful. So I would love if you guys could get a chance to read that. And in that story, basically, it's really interesting when you start centering future generations and the future ancestors looking back at us. It really shifts the way you think about things. It's like a technique to do the regenerative storytelling because you shift out of urgency and into responsibility. And time really stretches beyond headlines and election cycles. And it goes into asking not only what is collapsing, but what is being remembered, restored, and reimagined. And most of the time, I've seen when you do this, you actually see that the smallest things that you have done can have the biggest impact. It's really not the things that we think we are going to change the world or the whole thing and we have to do that. No, there's some of these small things that you do that have ripples across time. And this is my prompt for you guys to try out today is if you had to write a short story for a story from the future. And if you've already done this, feel free to share something that you've already written as well. And we would love to hear from you. The idea is if you could write a few sentences from, let's say, the year 2027 or 200 to 100, and it's a future descendant that's thanking you. And what did you shift? A story that you seeded into the world, you could talk about that, or a story that you refuse to keep telling and you refuse to keep believing and following. What could that look like? A friend of mine was telling me about the 75th birthday of his aunt and how they had done like thanking her for what she has done for them. And he told me that it is so funny that people were thanking her for the smallest things, not because something big changed in their life, but for a small thing that she did or said that actually changed a lot of things in their life. So if that's how things ripple, maybe think about what could it look like for you. Does anybody have anything to share? Nobody's expecting any finished work. None of these things get done in a few minutes. It's just to workshop something out. So, oh, I have a response. That's beautiful. Thank you, Robin, for it. Let's read it out. Thank you that our world knows how to live in love now. Love for our whole selves as humanity, and love and care for all that supports and nourishes our existence on earth. Thank you for making that seem possible and creating space where people could practice this together so that my grandparents could begin to dream that it was possible, and so that they showed my parents that there were real systems and principles of love that they could live their lives within. Thank you for refusing to tell the story that system structures of control, fear, dominance, and anxiety were just the way the world were, and that we were tapped into them. Thank you for dreaming and doing, and for looking for many dreaming others dreaming and doing in ways that supported care, belonging, love as visible systemic approaches. Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you, Robin. Really beautiful. I could feel what you said in my body, and it felt really loving and warm and fuzzy. So thank you so much for writing such a beautiful letter for us and sharing it. Luis, Prakash, Stephanie.
Sure, I'll share something. Thank you.
Yeah.
They wrote, "Thank you for trying. We can see you were doing the best you could to remember our interbeing and entanglement and to help others remember. We can see how you were trying to disentangle yourself from the story of separation. It might not have felt like enough at the time, like it was a drop in the bucket, but it was a drop in the bucket that helped get us here. If we could go back, we'd tell you to keep going and keep trying in the ways you can, that what you're doing matters even though it can feel futile, that it does add up with the hearts of others, and that we become even more than you dreamed we could be."
Wow, that was so beautiful. I think your story was healing for me as well. because I mean, somebody telling you that what you did was enough is such a big thing for us, right? You're always so in this fear-based space where you're like, what I do, would it be enough? Would it matter? And I think your story did that healing for me too. I was like, I need that. I was almost having tears. So thank you for that. I don't know, how did it feel for all of you? I thought that was beautiful. I'm glad. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing. If there was a way that we could continue some of this work, I would actually think maybe we could have like a blog for from our letters to the future, and I could send a Google Doc link to you guys, and then that way we could all drop our letters in here, and we could maybe publish it as a blog with Ecoversities. I'm sure they'll have some way that we could, populate this as a way to do it. And if you guys have it already in the chat, and if you would like to put your name and your email ID or whatever you need to be thanked as a contributor to this something cool that we've created from this workshop, please do so. I mean, this was not an idea I had beforehand. It's something that just came to me seeing, I was like, oh my God, you guys are such good storytellers. We should actually have these stories somewhere so that it's more people who can read your stories and, be touched by them, more lives touched by this. So I have put I have put a document, a Google Doc, and you could just paste things into the Google Doc as well. Okay, I'm guessing I have an email ID where we can share them if we want to create a short blog post that they can share as an outcome from our session. So we will make sure we share to this email ID so that they have it. Sent. Okay. Okay. Yes, thank you. And Andrew, thank you. Robin, do you want to paste yours in, or should I do it for you? I can paste yours in if you would like. Maybe I'll let you do it. Thank you. Yeah, you can put in your email ID, anything else you would like to add. Okay, so we kind of are at the end. Any of you would like maybe another last minute, because we have nothing much left in our workshop, just an artistic expression picture that I wanted to share with you. But if you would like to, if anybody wants to read out their story, absolutely. I can give you my LinkedIn, and then we could stay in touch. And I mean, I can also chat through email as well. So let me give that to you. And if any of you have a story you want to share out, because I feel like it's way more powerful when you tell your story than I tell it. So any of you who could do it, yes, absolutely. Let me give you access to the slides here today, and uh, I can also give you the LinkedIn thing that can help. Okay, I'm just pasting my LinkedIn in now. Okay, and since I don't hear anybody, I think there are a few more stories that came in. Please do paste the stories into the Word document so that we all can make this a cool blog post as an outcome of our workshop and share it with the Ecoversities conference. And yeah, thanks for connecting, Darfan. And yes, looking forward to seeing your Substack and all the cool things you have written about. I had a last picture. I had a short video I wanted to share with you guys. This is an art from the artistic expression that we had. Oh, let me see if it even loads this thing. Maybe it doesn't. It's a beautiful. I also wanted to. I didn't bring in a lot of art in the session, so I just wanted to share this artistic expression, which was from Aurora, who's an artist in Mexico, who was a part of my the fellowship journey that we had created. And this was her initial picture of when we had asked her to think about her roots of remembrance. It started off with her thinking about the sorrow and the grief of what she was living in, what she wanted for the world, and the diversity that she felt was thriving through her, but also like her past and her history, and how there's so much of like this domination and separation that she could feel into while she was thinking about her roots. So that is something I wanted to share with you. And then let me see if this video opens. If it doesn't, then I can we'll find another way to show you the video. And I'm going to share the slides with you right now. So okay, so I don't think it's working. So I'm going to close with this last slide, which actually is like just a take-home quote that I wanted to share with all of you. It said, if stories shape systems and systems influence culture, then what if every connection we have, what if every meeting we do, and every effort, every action, campaign, or every creation we have is an act of designing the story for a flourishing future? So I would love for us to look at storytelling not just as telling a story, but as a way of being in the world where we are shifting the language we use, we are shifting the way we come into this world, the way we build our relationships. And every part is your way of telling the new story and designing a better future. Just the way I think Stephanie was talking about it, Robin was talking about it. I'm sure I have Andrew, who was also sharing something similar, Elias as well. Elise as well. So I would love to leave you guys with that. I have 1 minute, so I could read Andrew's and we could close with a thank you. So thank you for showing your imperfections. So much of the world was hidden, your polished veneer. Reality was pressed together, crammed into two tight spaces. No room for us to move and breathe. Ourselves were squished into even layers, but your life helped crack the surface. It opened possibilities for us to share our full richness, all the rough, the unfinished parts of ourselves that are essential to healing. Really nice, Andrew, and thank you so much for writing and sharing. I hope